Well, most of you probably already know by now that Nicole and I are moving into a new house. And in fact, we've already moved everything over from the house. It's been 4 days of craziness. I haven't even had time to shave. But now I have to move what is really like a second house, and that's my shop. So it's a little bit bittersweet. I'm looking forward to the future of building a new shop, but in the meantime, I've got to pack everything that's in this entire shop into my new garage, not even to be used, just to be stored there. So that's really my challenge today. So I don't really have a particular lesson here other than to share my experience of this process with you guys and show you as much footage as I can, and maybe you'll learn something from it. I certainly haven't gone through this many times. I don't really know exactly what to expect with some of the bigger machines. And I'll show you whatever I can come up with as little tricks to kind of keep things safe as you go. And today I'm going to start with all the small stuff, hand tools, all the things on the back wall behind me, clamps. I want to get all that out of the way first so I can kind of survey what I have left. And I'm definitely going to be using some professional help to get the bigger tools out of here, because when we moved from California out to here, I only had a couple big tools and we took care of those ourselves, and we had several near disasters with that, and I swore that I would never go through that again. So anyway, let's jump right into it. Hopefully I'll have some cool tips for you as we go along. Now, I spend a lot of time getting these chisels perfectly sharp, and the last thing I want to do is see a nice nick in them when I go to use them in the future. So blue tape is going to really help out here. So for these, I'm pretty much just going to take one piece, wrap it over the front, and pinch it there on the sides if you have any slack. And I'll take a second piece and wrap it around the other way, and leaving some extra material here at the top. Just kind of spin it around. Pinch it at the top. And now what that does is it gives you a little bit of a buffer before the blade, actually, you don't want the blade coming right out to the end because it could easily cut through. But now I've got this little flap of extra material that kind of keeps that a little bit safer. Okay. Now, if you happen to have some old socks that need to be replaced, go ahead and use them in the shop, because this is going to be really helpful. Things like block planes, your smaller plane items, these are great. Just slide them into the sock and now it's pretty well protected. It might stink afterwards, but small price to pay. Now, for something like a saw, really, I'm just most concerned about protecting those teeth. So blue tape works really well again. Okay, put tape on one side. Now I'm going to put tape on the second side, but I'm going to put it a little bit lower. And by keeping it a little bit lower, I could then fold it over and use that little strip of sticky material at the top and hold it in place. And that should do a pretty good job. Now, for something like a bigger plane like this, I've got some packing material that I saved. Anytime I get a shipment, not only because we send stuff out for the Wood Whisperer, but just to have it around. If I get a shipment of anything that comes with good packing material, I just throw it into a box and hold on to it, because you never know when you can use it. So this stuff is going to come in really handy to protect a nice big plane like this. If you don't have packing material, you can always use pillowcases and bed sheets, things from the house. It's a good excuse to buy new stuff when you're moving anyway, so go ahead and take some of your more beat up stuff and just wrap them all around, and that should help keep them safe during the move. Now I'm going to fit as much as I can into a little plastic tote, and I don't really plan on ever carrying this by hand because this is going to get heavy. So hand trucks, man, are a lifesaver. You could stack 2 or 3 of these up on there and save yourself, 20 trips back and forth. So what I want to do is get everything into a nice compact form. So I'm taking my chisels, and I've got an old plastic bag from something, I'm not even sure what it's from. I'm just going to use that to kind of help separate and protect the handles. So it separates one chisel from the other. So I'll put one of the chisels in place, and I'll wrap it once. Then I'll take another chisel right next to it and run it the other way. And wrap it one more time. Then a little clear packing tape, wraps it nice and tight. Now I've kind of run out of things to wrap my planes in, so what I'm going to use is this plastic wrap that you get in the big rolls like this. This will actually help keep everything secure, keep it protected and safe, and it's not too expensive. It's just a little tricky with one hand. Now for my clamps, I don't really feel the need to necessarily protect them so much as just make my life easier moving them. So I'm taking about 4 at a time, bunching them together, and using some of the shrink wrap stuff here. Wrap it around either end. It makes it much easier to carry these. Now if you happen to have some luggage, luggage is great for moving things because most of it has wheels and has a little handle. It's awesome. So even for shop stuff, it can come in handy. I've got this huge bag here that I'm just going to put a bunch of clamps in, and there's a set of wheels on the one end, so even if it's super heavy, it's still going to be relatively easy to move around. Now if you're traveling a great distance, you probably want to be a little bit more careful than I'm going to be with any type of fluids. Obviously, you want to keep them upright. You want to figure out a way to stop any of the material from coming out of the cap should anything happen. But all I really need to do, again, I've got like a 15-minute drive. I'm just going to grab some clear packing tape, run it over the cap and down the sides. My goal is to make sure that the cap just doesn't come off. I will make sure that these things stay upright during shipment. This can, you could do exactly the same way. And of course, for just regular cans, quart cans of finish, same idea. You might even want to go in 2 directions on this one, just to be safe. All right, so here it is, guys. The shop is just about done. I did everything I could possibly do by myself without risking hurting my back or doing damage to the machinery. So here's the plan. With all that stuff gone, the only thing left, there's maybe 7, 8, no more than 10 large items that need to be moved. So what we did was we took a look at Craigslist, and it turns out there are a lot of people who work for moving companies or who have experience moving really heavy things and who are very hungry for work right now. It's just a sign of the times. So you can get really good prices on people to come out to help you with these things. So we have a guy who's on his way out. He's got a truck. He says he moves grand pianos. He moved an entire metalworking shop in the past. So he's no stranger to these larger items. Most of my stuff is on wheels, but that doesn't help it get up a 1-inch or a 3/4-inch ramp. And you certainly don't want to have it coming down back at you. So I'll be very interested to see how this guy decides to handle most of this stuff. With his permission, I'm going to try to get some of this stuff on film so you guys can see how it goes, but this is going to be probably one of the most nerve-wracking days of my life. So I'll take you on that fun little journey with me. But for now, I'm just trying to straighten up. I'm making sure everything is nice and tidy. I'm lightening things as much as possible. If he requires me to, I'll lighten every tool as much as possible. Like you could take the beds off of the planer, for instance. I could take the extension wing off of the table saw. But if he has the means to get the whole thing in one shot, I'd rather just leave it all attached. So it's time to have some white knuckles and get nervous. So let's see what happens. So it took 2 trips, but we got everything here. It cost $475 to have 2 guys for, I would say, maybe 3 hours moving things back and forth. And again, 2 trips. Well worth every penny not to have to risk injury to myself or the tools. Basically what we have here is a 3-car garage, pretty standard stuff. I've got all of the heavy tools, the things that I'm not going to touch until the new shop is built. All that stuff is over here, stacked together as tight as I could possibly fit it. Obviously, I can't get to it. I don't have the electrical requirements are just not going to be met here, so I'm not worried about that. Now, this is the 1-car side. I've got my bench, a lot of my Festool stuff, my hand tools. This is the side that I'm going to live out of until the shop is done. So if I do any projects, they're going to be projects that really require the most basic tools. And the bare minimum is pretty much all I'm going to be working with over here. So it should be an interesting few months as we get the new shop built and we focus on this very small space. And you know, for me, it's relatively small because I'm used to that really big garage. I was really spoiled before. But this brings me back to my roots. This is where I started, in one side of a 1-car garage. So it should be pretty interesting to see how it goes. But again, $475 was a small price to pay to make sure that the stuff made it here perfectly safe and by other people doing all the heavy lifting. So my final moments in my empty and very sad and lonely shop, kind of a sentimental moment, and I was just looking around with Nicole and noticed a lot of stains. I like to call it artwork on the floor that kind of take us through some of the history of things that I've done in here. These are some, well, obviously there's a lesson to be learned here. It's probably not a good idea to just spray paint on your concrete, but it's like an Art Deco thing, really. These are the HVAC grates from the home theater. I spray painted them black, and you can see it leaves a nice outline. This is one of the first things I did when I got here. My neighbor wanted me to make a big entertainment center, and I used some brown aniline dye and sprayed it, and wasn't very careful. Here's actually the outline for the smaller unit here. That's nice, huh?
What's all this?
That is rust, and I'm not sure, that's not me. Oh, you know what that is? That's not rust. That's brown dye. Yeah. This is actually some shellac that I dropped one day, and you could see the outline of the interlocking foam pads where it basically stuck them to the ground. This over here, check this out. Do you remember that white rocker I told you about that I did for that lady? I have a real bad habit of not putting stuff on the ground to protect it. You can see there's just a ton of stuff that I've sprayed and have made a mess of. But
What about that?
that's my shop, and I could do what I want. This, well, look at this. This is where the cyclone was, and apparently it's all plastic, right? I had a PVC and I had a plastic cyclone system. The static electricity on the outside attracts dust, and it leaves a nice outline on the wall that someone's going to have to take care of.
Looks like a brontosaurus or something.
It looks like a brontosaurus. Yeah, it does look like an animal. The Loch Ness Monster. And, well, who could forget the hole in the wall where the dust goes? So this doesn't really serve a whole lot of purpose unless you wanted to hook a dryer up out here or something, but that's going to be someone else's issue to repair. But you know, it's been a great run. We've had a lot of fun here, and there's a lot of good memories. And hey, the great thing is I've got about 100 episodes of a show taking place here that I could always look back to when I need to reminisce. But we've got some big plans for the future. The Wood Whisperer is going to, what did I say earlier? I'm going to be knocked up to the next level. It's not funny the second time around. It wasn't funny the first time. I'm going to be elevated to the next level as we get the new shop built and just move on to bigger and better things. So, time to hit the road.
Where are you going? Come on, get in the car, Bender.